I stood concealed in the dimly lit corner of the ballroom, observing the couple as they gracefully moved across the dance floor. Their gaze was locked, lost in each other's eyes. With each sway, the woman's chest rose and fell, pressed tightly against her partner's broad frame. They'd epitomized elegance in motion. He moved like an athlete, and she followed his lead flawlessly. All eyes were fixed on them, drawn by the magnetic connection they shared. There was a bond between them, though perhaps not love. It was stronger than mere friendship. Her honey blonde hair flowed softly, mirroring the gentle movements of the tide as she remained pressed against him, held tightly by the handsome man. Normally, I might have been envious of their connection, but the woman in his arms was my wife of 11 years, dancing with her boss. Instead of envy, I felt a surge of anger and humiliation. This wasn't our first time attending her company's annual awards banquet. We'd been to 8 others over the years, and everyone knew she was my wife. I could sense people scanning the room for me, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. After 3 dances, they left the floor, joining colleagues at a table in the center of the room. I watched as she looked at him with the same bedroom eyes that were once reserved for me. Though I hadn't seen those eyes recently, the disgust inside me only grew. The recurring thought haunted me. It's just a matter of time. Our marriage was teetering on the edge of collapse, the kettle of our relationship about to boil over. I struggled to make sense of the conflicting emotions within me: fear, hate, and resentment mingled with memories of love, respect, and trust for my wife. It felt like I was fighting a losing battle, trying to hold onto something slipping away. With a heavy heart, I admitted defeat. I had invested months of effort into repairing our bond. I planned romantic evenings, took on extra chores, and tried to engage in meaningful conversations, only to be met with her retreating further into her shell. Flowers, notes, and heartfelt gestures ended up discarded or ignored. I even sent flowers to her workplace, unsure if they ever reached her. What else is there left but to wait? I pondered. Pushing aside these thoughts, I returned to the makeshift bar in the corner and struck up a conversation with Batty, one of Penny's old work friends. "Enjoying yourself?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "I always love these annual parties. Harry's a big fan of the free drinks," she replied, raising her glass with a smirk. "Same here. By the way, I haven't seen Julian's wife tonight. Did she come?" "Oh, didn't Penny tell you? Julian served her with divorce papers today. Seems she wasn't fulfilling her wifely duties." Batty was at that perfect level of tipsiness, where words flowed without much filter. I seized the opportunity, not expecting disappointment. "No, probably not, especially on a Friday night. We rushed straight here after work. Didn't get a chance to catch up," I smoothly lied. We had actually taken the afternoon off to prepare, and she could have easily mentioned it during that time, but she chose not to. Refilling my Captain and diet, I grabbed a glass of white wine for Penny and made my way over to where she and Julian were standing, deep in conversation, oblivious to my approach. "Penny, I got you a glass of wine," I said, offering it to her. She jumped slightly, clearly startled. "Oh, you surprised me," she exclaimed, taking the glass. "Thanks, dear." The awkwardness grew thicker as we lingered there. Most guests suddenly found intense interest in the tablecloth or distant corners of the room, avoiding eye contact with me. Some stared, likely pondering my thoughts and level of obliviousness. A young man, about 25, even smirked at me before quickly looking away when our eyes met. It was nearing 1 a.m., and many guests had already left the ballroom, but Penny seemed unwilling to part from her conversation with Julian. "We should probably head home, honey. I still need to drop the babysitter off, and we promised her we wouldn't be out past 2 tonight," I interjected, aware that I was interrupting Penny's time with Julian. "Yeah, okay. I guess it's time to go. I'll see you on Monday," she replied with a smile. There was a collective sigh of relief from those around us, signaling that the awkwardness was nearly over. "Julian, good to see you," I said, extending my hand. We shook hands, his grip tighter than necessary, a clear attempt to assert dominance. He was slightly taller than me, but I outweighed him with a small paunch to prove it. I applied a bit more pressure than usual, locking eyes with him, detecting deception and smugness in his gaze. Finally, he released my hand, bidding us good night. I waved at the remaining guests as we left the room and headed for the car. We drove home in silence, though Penny's smile made her look radiant. Once home, Penny went to check on Mia, our 9-year-old daughter, while I paid Shirley and prepared to take her home. Upon my return, I found Penny already in bed, fast asleep. I checked on Mia, used the bathroom, and retired to the spare room to sleep. My eyes closed with the image of the ceiling in my mind as I drifted into a restless sleep, mentally preparing for the day ahead. I woke up early on Saturday morning, finding Mia already in the family room watching her shows. I gave her a little wave as I stopped in the doorway. "Have you had breakfast yet?" "Yep," she replied, waving her spoon in the air, splattering drops of milk onto the carpet. "Okay, be quiet. Mom's still asleep, and I have work to do in my office. Okay," I whispered to Mia. "Okay, Dad," she replied a little too loudly, and I chuckled. Well, that didn't work. Around 8:30, I dialed my lawyer's cell, knowing he worked from home on Saturday mornings. "Morning, Grant. Thomas Gray here," I greeted. "Good morning, Tom. I take it this isn't a cheerful call," he responded, already anticipating the answer. "That's correct. It's time to put the plan in motion. Found out that Julian served his wife yesterday. Do we know if Penny has seen a lawyer yet?" "I don't think so, but I'll give the sleaze a call and make sure," Grant replied. "I'll meet you in half an hour at the coffee house. You can sign and date the forms, and my assistant will notarize them. We'll file first thing Monday morning and have her served at lunch." "Sounds good to me. See you shortly," I agreed. I arrived early at the coffee shop, offering a weak smile to the cute barista as I collected my order. Finding a comfortable chair by the fireplace, I let my mind wander. Never did I imagine I'd be divorcing the love of my life. It's hard to pinpoint the exact moment when you realize your comfortable life is ending, but I can get pretty close. It was a traffic ticket, one of those automatic red light camera fines. You know, where they capture a picture of the driver's face, the car's license plate, and the date and time. That was the tipping point. I stumbled upon the ticket while sorting through the mail. I chuckled, knowing immediately it was Penny's. She always pushed those lights when she was in a rush. Opening it, I planned to quietly pay it without mentioning it to her. Confronting her about it wouldn't lead to anything good. There in the photo of the driver was Penny, and next to her, the shoulder and arm of a man. His face wasn't visible, but I knew who it was. It could have been innocent, lunch, a meeting, anything. I checked the date and timestamp, March 5th. Something about that date didn't sit right with me. It wasn't that long ago. I scrolled through my phone and found our text messages from the 5th. Penny at 11:19, dropping by Batty's after work to pick up clothes for Mia. I remember thinking it wasn't unusual. Batty's daughter was a couple years older, and we get cute things from them, though I thought Batty usually brought them to work. Still, my radar wasn't beeping. "Tom, don't worry, do you want me to make dinner?" Penny: "Yes." Tom: "What time should I expect you?" Penny: "At 6. We can chat for a minute." Tom: "All right, have fun." Penny: "Thanks, we will." That woman, I thought, checking the intersection on Google Maps. It was on the opposite end of town from where Batty lived, but still, it could be innocent. Right, then I started connecting the dots. Since late November, Penny had been distant. Throughout the holidays, we argued over trivial matters. By January, she avoided holding my hand while shopping or walking. Our conversations dwindled to work or Mia. We stopped discussing our dreams, family vacations, or our future. I've had a trust fund since childhood. My great-grandfather invested in undeveloped land in the Pacific Northwest, logging and profiting from it. As the local city expanded, he sold parcels back, benefiting me with a hefty sum. It grew further upon my grandfather's passing. I never needed to dip into it since my family was self-sufficient. The balance grew with interest. After my father's death, inheriting his estate, I merged his trust with mine. With our accumulated wealth, the three of us were close to being set for life, but Penny and I continued working to grow our capital in preparation for retirement. I was encouraged to obtain a prenuptial agreement to protect the fund when Penny and I got married. Every few years, we updated the prenup and our wills. One thing that remained constant was the standard, what's mine is mine, and what's yours is yours divorce clause. We did add a provision for Mia to receive an education in the event of my death or if we divorced. Of course, there were provisions concerning the circumstances surrounding my death. Naturally, Penny wouldn't receive anything if she had a hand in my demise. Because of this, I had access to a family lawyer and accounting services for years. I contacted my lawyer and got the name of the best local divorce attorney. I arranged a meeting with him by the end of the week to explore my options. Since we had a solid prenup, he wasn't worried about any financial issues. I explained that I wasn't ready to take any drastic actions at this point, just wanted to know what steps to take next. Well, Tom, we could have a private investigator look into what's going on and see if there's anything to worry about. Unfortunately, all my investigators are busy right now. It would be several weeks before they could invest any time in your case, Grant Stewart explained. I really don't want to wait. I'm already losing sleep over this. Are there any other options? I asked. Well, there is one. He's trying to get things started, but few really trust him. We call him David the Sleaze, Grant explained. He's an ex-cop who was retired due to a history of complaints and some questionable activity. He could get started right away, but I don't know if I would recommend a lasting relationship with him. Why do you call him the Sleaze? I asked, laughing. I want things legal, so if we do find something, we'll be on solid ground if we have to move forward. Totally, he's legal. He has a habit of obtaining detailed pictures, videos, emails, and phone conversations that, let's just say, walk a fine line of being admissible in court. But I'm told what he finds is solid proof of infidelity one way or the other. Okay, as long as he's legal. We could always pay him off and switch to a more reputable PI in a couple of weeks, I suggested. Do you think he can start today? I'll give him a call and find out. I'll be your go-between here at the office. I'll let you know later today. Sounds good, thank you. I filled out a bunch of documents for both the lawyer and the sleaze, connected him with my accountant, and left a retainer from my personal account. Penny didn't have access to it, so she wouldn't know what I was up to. I didn't want to startle her, especially if I was wrong, and it's just a rough patch in our marriage. While this was going on, I decided to try to repair my relationship with my wife. My life experiences have told me that people don't just change and do uncharacteristic things unless there is a catalyst. Since I didn't know what that was for my wife, and I didn't know if we were past the point of no return, I decided to make sure I was taking care of business as a husband. I picked up my game and did my best to make sure she felt loved and valued as an equal partner in our relationship. I doted on her and made it my goal to be the husband that all her friends were jealous of. At every turn, I was met with rejection, and it became evident that we had already reached the point of no return. One Thursday afternoon, I was summoned back to Grant's office to receive what the sleaze had found. I was shown hours of footage showing them meeting, sleeping together, and playing the part of a happy couple. There were photos, phone call recordings, and personal email exchanges. I was both impressed and repulsed by the sleaze, agreeing that his nickname was well earned. Sitting there, I was devastated. Never would I have imagined that she would have an affair with Julian Morgan. I suppose I could see why she would be drawn to Julian. He was tall, handsome, and fit. He was sophisticated and climbing the ladder both professionally and personally. Taking over Penny's department about a year ago, as his personal assistant, Penny worked closely with Julian, giving him ample opportunity to worm his way into her life. Julian had been a college baseball star, and the only thing that stopped him from going pro was a shoulder injury in his senior year. Who wouldn't be impressed by him? I just never thought Penny would let him come between us. It was all too much to bear. I couldn't breathe, my chest tightened, my vision blurred, and I felt like I was going to faint. I pushed my chair back, placing my head between my knees, trying to focus on my breathing. In, and out, until my head cleared. The feeling of loss and emptiness was indescribable. I had just lost my best friend, my confidant, my lover, and the mother of my child. In that moment, I couldn't see a way out of this, And then the sleaze piled on more. He played a recording from the day before, explaining why he wanted us all to be together. Penny. Really? You love me? Her voice held excitement. Julian, yes, my darling, you are the most perfect woman. I love you, and I want us to be a family. Penny, you mean you, me, and Mia? Julian, of course. Penny, what about Tom and, Nora? Julian, we'll divorce them, you'll get Mia, and we'll live as a happy family. There was a pause in the conversation, and I imagined Penny was processing the bomb her lover just dropped. Julian, you do love me, don't you, Penny? Penny, yes, of course I do. I never gave much thought to leaving Tom, is all. Julian, well, give it some thought. He could never give you what I can. You will be the belle of every ball, part of high society. Go places and see things that loser could never afford. I could hear the contempt in his voice and imagined the disdain on his face. Penny, it would kill him to lose Mia. We are his world. Julian, I'll be 10 times the father than that loser ever could be. In a year, she won't even want to go and see him. Penny, why do you hate him so much? What has he done to you? Her voice carried concern. To be honest, I wanted to know as well. Julian, he doesn't deserve you, Penny. That loser has no ambition, no drive to be anything more than what he is today. A drone making someone else rich. Penny, you do know he's a plant manager, right? He oversees 400 people, and their plant has the highest production rates and revenue per square foot of any in the company. I felt a flicker of pride at Penny's defense, though I would have preferred this conversation to happen anywhere other than a hotel room. Julian, he's weak, a weak beta who had no drive or ambition in school, and he hasn't even earned his MBA. He's served his time. I can tear him down any day of the week. Penny, Julian, don't think you're that much better than Tom. He's not weak. You don't know about his younger days. He ran with some tough crowds and is skilled with guns. He almost went down a bad path until he decided to go to school. That's why he didn't go to college for a few years after high school. She sounded like she was boasting now. Penny, he's stronger and tougher than you give him credit for. Please promise me you won't get physical with him. I wouldn't want either of you hurt, him for Mia's sake and you for mine. But I'm not in love with him anymore. I wish I were, but you've replaced him as my man, my love. She paused, contemplating. How would this work, and when? Julian, we'll divorce them at the same time. I've got a few things to get in order before I serve Nora, but with her psychiatric issues and the fact that she and I haven't had anything for a year, it wouldn't be a problem. I'll split everything 50-50, she won't hardly contest. Penny, okay, but you have to file on Nora before I'll even see a lawyer, she was defiant. I figured she wanted to hedge her bets and not risk losing her comfortable life, even for her true love, her man. Julian, deal. Now come here, woman. I asked for the tape to be turned off at this point. I didn't need to hear any more. I looked over at Grant and said, how do I deal with this? You strike first, Tom. But what if she changes her mind? They rarely change, Mr. Gray. I'm afraid they've reached a point where nothing you do or say will make them stop or repent. I got my first good look at David, nicknamed the Sleaze. He was in his 30s, clean-cut, athletically built, and his suit fit him well, completely different from what I had imagined. He was respectful, and he was probably right, I thought. I started to see him as David, not just the Sleaze. I felt like he was genuinely on my side. Even though I was paying him, he seemed to care and was disgusted by what he had seen and heard from those two. And would you still want her after knowing what you do now? David added. You're probably right, David. Turning to Grant, I said, Grant, give me a day or two to decide, and I'll call you, okay? Sounds good, Tom. Can I start working on the framework of the documents, and we can fill in the details later, or scrap the whole thing if you want? Yes, let's do that. As David followed me out, he handed me his card. That has my personal number on it, Mr. Gray, in case you ever need me on the side. Please, David, Call me Tom. Thank you. Tom, I know some people who could help you get revenge if you decide to go that route. I mean, they call me David the Sleaze for a reason, he stated with a smile. Laughing, I said, good to know, David. I'll let you know if I need that kind of help. Seriously, though, thank you for the offer. I don't think I could do that to Penny, but I like knowing I have a friend if I decide to go down that path. David smiled at me and waved as he headed for his car. All weekend long, I dwelled on my choices, barely able to concentrate on anything else. It seemed Penny hadn't even noticed I was deciding the fate of our family. It occurred to me that she had already made that decision for all of us. I grappled with feelings of doubt, anger, fear, and frustration. The most painful part was the humiliation and loss of my perceived manhood. My self-identity was wrapped up in my work and my family. Who would I be without my family? I wondered. I worry about Mia and how she would navigate this next chapter. The thought of that arrogant bastard raising my daughter irritated me. I even had flashes of him walking her down the aisle at her wedding. My emotions and thoughts were a chaotic mess. No matter how much booze I poured over them, clarity eluded me until Sunday morning. Sitting on the back deck nursing a hell of a headache, it dawned on me that this was probably going to happen, no matter how much I fought it. I had already lost my wife. I could see the contempt in her eyes. I had already lost my family. What mattered now was on whose terms and under what conditions I would lose everything. Then an old saying struck me: lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. Well, I wasn't going to step aside, and I certainly wasn't going to follow those cheaters. So I had only one choice: to lead. Monday morning, I rang up Grant. Grant, Tom Gray here. Good morning, Tom. Any closer to a decision? Yes, I have. I want you to complete all the required documents, including only the legal pics David obtained. Split everything 50-50ths. I paused. Do you want to sell the house? Yes, we took a low-interest loan from my trust fund to buy it, so we've been paying ourselves all this time. We'll split any equity we get, but I'll recover the full loan amount and interest we've paid over the years. It's a win for me, I explained. Also, please add $200,000 for Penny out of my trust. Consider it payment for services rendered. She might be more amiable if she knows she isn't walking out of this completely broke. I want primary custody of Mia. I know it'll be tough, but maybe David can find some dirt on our boy Julian that would make him look less like a suitable father to a young girl. I heard he was a first-class frat boy in college. Maybe he got a little fresh with some of his conquests. Sick David on him, please. Have a backup plan for Mia. If we get too much pushback on the primary custody thing, write up the most generous shared custody plan you've ever heard of. I stopped for a second to let Grant catch up. Also, I want to sue Julian for alienation of love and affection and find a way to get his wife Nora involved in the mess. I want her to be aware of what's going on in a completely legal, above-board kind of way. Speaking of her, please create another divorce setup for adultery and have it ready for her. I'll pay her fees. I think she should get what's coming to her and make it ugly. We can arrange for both of them to be served in the alienation suite, but you should know it might not lead anywhere. I'll also need her to sign a contract with me. I can start the paperwork, but without her consent or information, there isn't much else I can do, Grant explained. I understand. I just want to stir things up a bit. And while you're at it, I want to sue Penny's company for allowing her to sleep with her boss. I doubt they have a morality clause in their handbook, but it must be shady for any company to allow this to happen under their watch, especially with him being her direct supervisor. I know it probably won't lead anywhere, but let's shake that tree and see what falls out, Tom replied. Okay, Tom. This is going to get expensive, and then it'll escalate from there. You're talking about a lot of man-hours, and if it's contested, even more, Grant warned. I understand. It's just money, and at this point, I'll empty my trust if I have to make sure those two don't profit more than they're due. As my daddy used to say, anytime you get a lawyer involved, you're just negotiating how much it's going to cost. I've got it, so I might as well use it, Tom said with determination. Grant chuckled at Tom's snide comment about lawyers as he replied, well, he sounds like he was a smart man. You know you don't have to give her any money from your trust. Your prenup is airtight. I know, Grant, but I've been thinking about this all weekend. I figured if I don't leave her destitute, she might be more willing to go along with my demands. And she kind of deserves it. She's worked hard and helped me protect it from unnecessary draws. Both of us were counting on it as our old age nest egg. I was thinking it might give her an edge over Julian, so when she finds herself out on her own, she doesn't have to rely on him as much. She deserves more, but there's no way I'm giving that cheating bastard Julian anything more of my life than he's already taken. I mean, my wife should be enough. I felt the rage bubbling as I spoke, just thinking about Julian taking over the life that was supposed to be mine. Despite Penny not returning the favor, I always considered myself fair in my dealings. I wanted to ensure I treated Penny fairly. My solace was that I was sure Mia would approve of my actions later when she understood how our family fell apart. One last thing, Grant, don't file yet. I want to have everything done, I's dotted and T's crossed and ready to roll. I want to wait for her to make the first move. This will give me more time with Mia in our family home. I know there will come a time when I need to pull the trigger, but I want it to be at the last moment when I can't hang with it anymore. Got it. We can leave it undated and not notarized until you're ready. I work on Saturday mornings from home, so if it falls apart on a weekend, you can give me a call. We still won't be able to file until Monday morning, but I can have somebody standing at the door when they open and have them served the same day. Good. It's a plan. We exchanged our goodbyes and hung up. I reached into my pocket, pulled out David's card, and dialed. David, Tom Gray, how are you? I asked. I'm good, he replied. Are you ready for some sleazy fun? Well, sort of, but I want you to wait for my word, okay? No problem, Tom. What are we talking about? Can we meet in person? Yep, give me an hour and I'll meet you at the Dunkin' on 6th. Sounds good, I replied. I was already waiting when he pulled into the lot. He grabbed some coffee and a snack before sitting down opposite me. I want you to put together the nasty file. Photos, video, recordings, everything you have. We need to find a way to get it to Nora Morgan anonymously, maybe email. No problem, I know a guy who works the dark web, David stated. Is that all? What about posting videos on websites or sending nasty messages to her parents or coworkers? He asked. Boy, he is sleazy, I thought. No, Penny will still have to be seen around town. I wouldn't want her so humiliated that she leaves town with Mia, and I still love the stupid bitch, even if she isn't in love with me anymore. I slipped an envelope with $5,000 cash in it across the table. This should get you started, but let me know if you need more. David thumbed the cash and looked up at me. $3,000 would get this done. He may be sleazy, but at least he is honest. Keep the rest as a retainer. I may need your expertise later. Don't forget, sit on the file till I call you. I want them caught off guard, and I have my reasons for letting them make the first move. Oh, we should also get an idea of what issues his wife has. Her medical history might play into anything we decide later. Is that possible? I asked, smiling at David, who returned the smile and nodded. And did Grant ask you to look into Julian's college days? I'm looking for something I can use against them if we fight over custody. David nodded again and made a couple of notes in his notebook. We finished our coffees and chatted about his career as a cop and people we might know. After shaking hands, we parted ways. That was 3 months ago. I was brought back to reality as Grant arrived, followed shortly after by his assistant and David. So, it's go time, huh? Grant asked as everyone seated around us. Yep, sounds like it. David, do we know if Penny has been to a lawyer yet? Not that I'm aware of. I did a quick search of her emails after Grant called and didn't see anything mentioned. I'll take a closer look today and we'll know by Monday morning, David stated. La la la, I didn't hear that, Grant exclaimed, plugging his ears with his index fingers. I can't know these things, David. David smiled and nodded, giving me a sly wink. What about Julian, any dirty laundry? I asked, hopefully. Yeah, he was under investigation with his fraternity, something to do with drugs. I got copies of everything and have already given them to Grant, David replied. Grant looked up and nodded his confirmation, adding, I've got them if we need them for the custody hearing. Pulling out the documents we had been working on for the past few months, he showed me where to sign. As I signed, Grant's assistant notarized, and I spoke to the group. David, could you please find out who Nora Morgan hired as her lawyer and inform Grant? Then Grant, if the lawyer seems competent, could you share our legal files with them? I addressed the group. What if the lawyer isn't any good? Grant raised a concern. If that's the case, we'll figure out a way to get Nora in touch with you, but I'd prefer to handle it properly. David, let's avoid sending her anything overly aggressive. David nodded, sipping his coffee, while Grant glanced between us. Grant, can I pick up the documents on Monday afternoon? I'll deliver them to Penny myself and inform her of the situation. Then could you arrange for official serving on Tuesday? Grant nodded in understanding, instructing his assistant about the filings and preparing for Tuesday's serving. And then I'd like Julian and their company to be served on Tuesday afternoon. I suppose we can drop Nora from the alienation suit since she'll be informed soon. Grant, you can share the file with Nora's lawyer on Monday afternoon, provided he doesn't interfere with my discussion with Penny Monday night. I leaned back, sighing. By Wednesday, things should be well underway. Tom, have you thought about where Penny will stay Monday night? Grant asked. Not until now. Any issue with her staying at the house for a few days? No, as long as you don't end up with a restraining order and she agrees. I wouldn't recommend sharing a bed. Legally, it might not be an issue, but it could be uncomfortable for you. I'd be worried about what a less than ethical lawyer might do with that information, Grant cautioned. Okay, I'll give her a week to find a place. We're not romantically involved right now. I don't see a problem. Oh, did you mean actually sleeping in the same bed? But our documents do grant me temporary control of the house and Mia, right? I clarified. Yes, until her lawyer files a motion and reverses it all, or until we come to an agreement. I meant actually sharing a bed. It might give a strange impression in the legal documents, Grant clarified. No worries, we're not sleeping together now. Hey David, what did you find out about Nora's medical situation? She's been battling depression and bipolar disorder for years. Apparently, the medication killed her libido and Mr. Wonderful went looking. David seemed about to add more but stopped himself, remembering Julian was involved. I smiled at him. I don't suppose we need to know how you found this out. David just smiled and shook his head, while Grant pretended to be shocked. Grant, is that a concern for us? I asked. Not immediately, but it might come into play later, especially regarding custody arrangements. We could include it as a condition in the final draft to ensure Mia is never left alone with her. Grant was jotting down notes on his iPad as he spoke. Okay, I don't see it being an issue since they don't have kids and they're divorcing as well. Better to be safe than sorry later. I winced inwardly. Divorce was a nasty business. We chatted a bit more before each of us ended our strategy session and went about our day. I felt a bit down for the rest of the weekend. The tasks I had to carry out on Monday weighed heavily on me. Not that I expected Penny to notice. On Sunday, I phoned my aunt and arranged for her to pick up Mia from school on Monday and have her stay overnight so I could have a discussion with Penny about some important family matters. They lived on a farm outside of town, and Mia always enjoyed spending time there, playing with their dogs and helping with the animals. My aunt would drop Mia off at school on Tuesday, and I planned to break the news to Mia that evening. I informed Mia of the arrangements, and though she was excited, she seemed a bit puzzled why it was on a Monday night. I brushed it off, telling her that Mom and Dad needed some private time to discuss things. She reluctantly accepted it. I had been sleeping in the spare room more frequently, and once again, Penny didn't mention it. She seemed relieved when she saw me heading there at bedtime. I lay in bed on Sunday night, going over my checklist and reviewing my plan, eventually drifting off to sleep in the early hours of the morning. Bright and early on Monday morning, I called my VP of operations and explained that I needed the week off. I also contacted my assistant and senior production manager to brief them on anything they needed to know while I was away. Around 1 p.m., I stopped by Grant's office and found David there as well. The stack of papers on the desk and the buzz of activity in the office indicated that everyone had been busy. "Tom, we filed at the courthouse this morning, and here are Penny's documents as you requested. We've also arranged for the official service at your home around 9 a.m. on Tuesday. Does that work for you?" Grant asked as he handed me the envelopes. "Yeah, that should work. I'm going to suggest to Penny that she takes the rest of the week off. I'll let you know if that changes," I replied. All right. Grant paused briefly to gather his thoughts before continuing. "David found Nora's lawyer, and he's rather competent. I've sent him our files, and he seemed eager. At first glance, it seems he'll be suggesting a countersuit for adultery and a much larger share of their assets than a 50-50 split. He's promised not to take any action until morning, so we're in the clear there." "All right, gentlemen, have we missed anything?" I asked, feeling a bit down. "It seems Penny has an appointment with her attorney next week, based on her calls and emails today. And Tom, please let me know if you need any further assistance, all right?" David asked discreetly, earning another sharp look from Grant, hinting at the confidential matters we were handling. "Okay, good. I'll do that, David, but I think we're fine," I replied, hoping I wouldn't need to get any deeper into this mess. It all depends on Penny and Julian now. I exited Grant's office and sent a text to Penny. "Penny, will you be home at a decent hour tonight?" 17:30. Why? What's up? "It's okay. I got a little distracted over the weekend and wanted to try and catch up on things today. I've arranged for Aunt Sally to come over to Mia's tonight and stay the night. Thought I'd bring some home-cooked food. Do you want some?" "That's nice. Chinese." "Sure. Dinner will be ready at 5:30. I felt pretty bad arranging things like this for her, but it's become somewhat of a habit lately. I hope she would just see it as me making an extra effort to be kind and loving." Monday night, 5:30. Penny arrived home around 5:15, and as she changed clothes, I set the table and prepared the food. Pouring a couple of glasses of wine, I sat at the table waiting for her. When she joined me, she took a long sip from her glass, and we began passing the dishes back and forth. We engaged in small talk as we ate, and she seemed unaware of what was about to happen. "How's the rest of your week looking?" I asked as our meal came to an end, and we picked at the remaining food on our plates. "Pretty light. Did you want to make plans?" she asked, giving me a sidelong glance. "No, I thought maybe you'd want to take the week off after our conversation," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Why would I do that?" "I know, Penny," I began, placing an envelope on the table in front of her. She looked down at it, then back up at me, taking a sip of her wine. "I know about Julian and your plans to file for divorce." She coughed, choking on her wine, and gave me a blank stare. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out how I knew or what she could do to slow me down. "What divorce?" she finally managed to choke out. "The one you have a meeting with a lawyer about next week, and the one Julian already filed on Nora. I know you're in love with him and planning to take Mia and leave me." I opened the packet and slid some of the photos towards her. Her eyes widened, and she set her glass down to pick up the photos and look through them. I could see her eyes moisten, and she started to hiccup a little, a sign of her becoming over-emotional. "I'm so sorry, Matthew. I never meant for any of this to happen. I don't know what else to say." She trailed off, looking down at the table. "I know, Penny. I've known about your plans for months. I've had time to make some peace with it all. I'm greatly disappointed in you, and I'm extremely hurt." I paused for a moment, gathering my confidence and controlling the anger swelling inside me. "The only thing I want to know is, did I do something or not do something that drove you to Julian?" "Oh God, no," she exclaimed, meeting my gaze briefly before retreating to the table, perhaps out of guilt and shame. It just kind of happened. You didn't do anything to drive me away. You were a great husband and father. I just fell for him," she finally managed to say. I felt both disappointed and relieved. I couldn't help it if she simply fell out of love with me and decided to choose Julian. He had plenty of time to worm his way into her heart and push me out, and there was nothing I could do now to prevent it. Our marriage was dead, and all that was left was the paperwork. I pulled out the terms of the divorce and handed it to her. Here is the settlement I'm proposing. I've already filed, so you don't have to unless you disagree with what I'm asking for. The main points are, the prenup is in effect, so my trust is off the table. I suggest we sell any joint assets and split the proceeds 50-50, including the house. Since I filed first, I'm asking for full custody of Mia and minimal child support from you. You'll have generous visitation rights. Mia will stay on my insurance, but you'll need to get your own. You'll keep your 401k, any pre-marriage investments, and the inheritance from your mom. I don't want to take anything that's rightfully yours. We'll divide any investments we made together, and Mia and I will remain in the house until it's sold. I'm also releasing $200,000 from my trust for you to establish yourself. I suggest getting a prenup to safeguard it if you end up with Julian as planned. I don't want to see you lose anything. I want to ensure you can be independent since I'm not asking for spousal support. I paused, letting her absorb what I just outlined. I think I should have Mia. A girl needs her mother as she matures, she said flatly. I completely agree, but you can fulfill that remotely through visits and calls. Frankly, I don't trust Julian with our daughter. I know he plans on trying to turn her against me with gifts and his charm. Since he couldn't have his own child, he wants mine. I think I'm already being generous by allowing him to have my wife. He doesn't get my daughter too. I understand you'll want to negotiate custody. I suggest we let the lawyers handle it and try to be civil. I suggested offering a peace gesture as I saw her face flushed during the discussion about Mia and Julian. He would never harm her, and if she's driven away, it'll be on you. Separating her from her mother is a good way to make that happen, she retorted. Well, either way, she stays with me until we figure something else out. You can stay here in the master bedroom for a few nights or the week until you sort things out. Penny, I still love you with all my heart. I thought we were going to conquer the world together, but you're tearing me apart, and I don't know what else to do. My world is crumbling, and I'm trying hard to be fair and kind. I really don't want to hurt you the same way you've hurt me. But trust me, if you go nuclear or let Julian get involved, I'll respond in kind. And darling, I have resources you both lack, I said, my tone now tinged with anger. She knew I could play hardball if pushed. She'd seen it before. So please, let's put this on hold and let the lawyers handle it. I want us to be polite and courteous whenever we meet. It's important for Mia to see us getting along. I plan for both of us to be deeply involved in our daughter's life, I pleaded. I really didn't want this to become a bitter battle. I'm off the rest of the week, and according to the law, you have to be officially served. That's scheduled here at the house for 9 a.m. I didn't want you embarrassed at work, so you might consider calling in and taking a few days off as well. I know it will be tense for both of us being home, but I thought we could sit down with Mia tomorrow night or keep her home Wednesday to explain what's happening. Thoughts? Penny had stopped eating altogether by now and looked a little pale and sickly. I think the full effects of her actions were finally settling in on her. She only had herself to blame. I was blissfully unaware until she set off this storm. She looked up at me, resembling a fish out of water, and then said, "Okay, Tom. You've obviously planned well and got ahead of us. I'm not sure how, but you did. I'll call into work first thing and at least be home through Wednesday. Do you think Sally can keep her tomorrow night as well? Maybe just keep her out of school tomorrow and bring her home Wednesday morning so we can talk." I proudly introduced him as David the Sleuth, I said, noticing her confused expression. My private investigator, David, uncovered this after I sensed something was off. I'll call Aunt Sally right away. That sounds like a good plan. Penny nodded slightly as I mentioned David, then picked up the papers I handed her and bid me good night. It seemed she needed some time alone to process everything. I watched as she headed into the master bedroom, locking the door behind her. That was fine, as I had already moved most of my belongings to the spare room earlier. I phoned my aunt and explained that we were dealing with a family matter, and she kindly agreed to keep Mia for another night, dropping her off mid-morning on Wednesday. I also spoke to Mia and informed her she wouldn't be going to school the next day. She was confused but accepted it. I assured her that Mom and I would explain everything on Wednesday. As I tidied up and prepared for bed, I could hear Penny murmuring behind the closed door, likely on the phone, and later heard soft sobs as she mourned the end of our marriage. Tuesday. I could hear Penny moving around early in the morning, getting ready for her day as she descended the stairs in casual attire. At exactly 9, she opened the door to accept her official documents and package, except for the photos and transcripts, which she must have reviewed last night in her room. After grabbing her keys and purse, she hurried out without mentioning her destination, but I assumed she was meeting Julian, her lawyer, or someone else for support. Later in the afternoon, Grant called me to inform that both Julian and their company had been served with our lawsuits. Apparently, Julian was also served with Nora's countersuit around the same time and was visibly upset. Grant advised me to keep a low profile and be cautious, as the server mentioned Julian had made threats towards me. I never thought Julian would act so recklessly, considering he was getting what he wanted. Nevertheless, as a precaution, I retrieved my .45 ACP 1911 from my gun safe, ensured it was loaded and ready, and discreetly tucked it beside me in my chair as I watched TV. A few hours later, I was at the sink when I spotted a black BMW screeching to a stop in my driveway, with an enraged Julian jumping out and retrieving a baseball bat from his trunk. Sensing danger, I quickly retreated to my chair where my cell phone lay, ready to dial 911. With the door securely locked, I felt a sense of safety. I called 911 and informed the operator that there was a man in my driveway with a baseball bat, my wife's boyfriend. Units were dispatched. Just as I made the call, I heard another vehicle pull up outside, likely Penny, given the commotion I could hear. Then, amidst the chaos, there was a sharp yelp. My heart raced as the front door shattered under a solid kick, and an enraged Julian barged in, shouting at the top of his lungs, "You bastard! You got me fired and ruined my divorce." His fury was palpable, but I remained calm, my hand instinctively reaching for the grip of the pistol. Feeling its weight reassured me. Julian swung the bat wildly, his words filled with venom. Outside, Penny's cries grew louder, pleading with him to stop. "I took your wife, and now I will kill you and take your daughter too, you asshole." I let Julian advance a few more feet before I drew my pistol from the seat cushion. His eyes narrowed with rage, but his judgment was clouded. With the bat raised above his head, he was no threat from 25 feet away. The crack of the cartridge in the chamber was deafening. I fired 3 bullets, and they reached the target. Julian fell down and didn't move again. Amidst the chaos, the screams echoed in my ears, amplified by the ringing from the gunshot. Sirens wailed in the distance, and the responding officers' shouts became audible. Uncertain of the gravity of the situation, they swiftly placed Penny on her stomach and handcuffed her near the open door. Her cries persisted until she began to vomit, purging whatever she had ingested or tasted. Still reeling from the shock of the unfolding events, I finally focused on the gun aimed at my face and the officer's frantic orders. "Freeze, drop the gun," he commanded. Coming to my senses a bit, I complied, letting go of my weapon and following his instructions. I lowered myself to the floor. Epilogue. The following weeks were a whirlwind of chaos and stress. Julian was pronounced dead at the scene. Later, I found out from police reports and eyewitnesses that he had been served with my lawsuit and updated divorce papers from his wife almost simultaneously. It didn't take him long to realize the photos came from me. Penny was beside him when he opened the envelope from his wife and confirmed she had the same set of photos. Moments later, they were both summoned to the VP's office, where they confessed their affair, unaware of the consequences. The executives, feeling the need to make a statement, promptly fired the managing director for engaging in an affair with a subordinate. In that moment, I became the embodiment of evil for Julian. He believed I needed to pay for standing up against him and thwarting his plans. Grabbing a souvenir bat from his office, he decided to come to my house. Penny spotted him through a second-floor conference room window and realized where he might be heading. She intercepted him in our driveway, attempting to calm him down before he could harm me. Of course, neither of them knew I had been forewarned of their arrival and was prepared. Penny ended up with a black eye when Julian pushed her aside while trying to force his way into our house. Thankfully, that was the extent of her physical injuries, but the emotional toll was immense. She suffered from nightmares for months, keeping several counselors busy. We spoke briefly a couple of times amidst the chaos of police interviews, legal proceedings, and court visits, but we never delved into a serious discussion about what happened in our house. Penny became a mere shadow of her former self, losing her husband, lover, and daughter within 24 hours to a heavy toll, and she never recovered. She stuck around for the divorce proceedings and maybe a month after they were finalized. She didn't hire a lawyer or contest anything. I easily gained custody of Mia. Surprisingly, she never claimed her share of the financial settlement. Grant held onto it for her, but eventually returned it to me a year later. She never returned to our home, opting to stay with friends and family until she vanished without a trace. Penny had a few supervised visits with Mia, but they were inconsistent. I made sure Mia was ready for every scheduled visit. Whether we had confirmation from Penny or not, she would only show up about every fourth time. I later learned that Penny had become addicted to painkillers and other prescribed narcotics, trying to cope and function as an adult. By the time she disappeared, she was unemployed, alone, and penniless. Neither Mia nor I, nor anyone she knew, had any contact information for Penny, and she never reached out again. We have no idea what became of her. We lost a wife and a mother. The house was sold, and Mia and I bought another one in her school district, trying to move forward with our lives. We both sought counseling after the traumatic events. I went for 6 months, but eventually had to push the hurt and pain aside and move on. I had a daughter to raise and a life to lead. Mia spent a few years in counseling on and off, dealing with her mother's reaction to the events and the abandonment, along with several other issues. It took me 3 years to feel ready to even consider dating again. Several months later, I met a wonderful woman named Lila. She was understanding and respectful of Mia's and my experiences. We took our time with dating, moving much slower than either of us would have preferred, but eventually we developed a physical relationship. About 16 months later, we got married. We raised Mia and Lila's daughter together as a family, but we didn't expand our family further. Over time, our lives stabilized and improved. Our only rough patches were during Mia's major life events, her high school and college graduations. Each time, I hired David to try and locate Penny, but every lead turned into a dead end. The prevailing belief was that she had likely died alone and troubled somewhere. It was a terrible ordeal, but we made the best of it and moved forward. I was grateful that I had the time to devise a plan of action and had the right people supporting me to see it through. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.